important has your sort of versatility as a musician, how important has that been in your career?
I think it's been nothing short of essential
Hmm.
for me. I was talking about going into college. I came from a really strong classical background, but I went into a jazz studies program. Um,
Right.
but I had great musical education that it didn't completely bridge the gap, but it certainly made going to a post-secondary institution um, really possible. And I was able to thrive in that environment as opposed to struggle or, maybe not feel as confident or get into certain ensembles. And I think it also gives you, like, in my early 20s, and like, I was a teenager, late teens when I went to college. Um, you have this blind confidence too. Like, I was good at violin, so I must be great at jazz. And, like, that's kind of insane. But it also means that, like you were saying, you have enough of a skill set to say yes to the gig and enough musicianship to be able to do it. And maybe you struggle and maybe there's someone there that does help you out, but then you can grow. And because I had that nice mix of both, I could say yes to things that would make me grow even more. I remember saying yes to a completely all Latin, Spanish, progressive music kind of band. And they just needed someone to sub because their lead singer was not available. And I had never done anything like that, but I knew enough about music to be able to do it and to show up to rehearsal. Same thing now, where I think back of all the classes that I took in school. I'm so glad that I really took them seriously because now I do arranging work, and there is a specialty need for string arrangers. So having the experience
Great.
as an actual string player, yeah, if you want me to write a big band chart, I can write you a big band chart, but it's pretty clinical. It's not going to be the same as if someone who writes it all the time and is a horn player and knows the instruments really well. But if you want me to write you a quartet, that's my zone, and that's where I can thrive. And there aren't a lot of people who can do that, not only very well and with experience as a string player, but for contemporary music. So if you want
Right.
strings on a hip hop track, that's going to make sense, but give you a vibe. I have that experience, and I think it allows you to just say yes to things. And of course, there are times when I said yes where I was a bit of a fish out of water, or I wasn't equipped enough to do it and I had to ask for help or even gracefully bow out. But I think just the ability to say yes, let that add to the list of skills that you have or can build upon. I'm very
Yeah,
proud.
the experience thing is, it's an interesting sort of problem because we're not born with experience.
Right.
So, what that means uh, is you have to do, maybe hopefully lower intensity face planting, you know? At times you have to, I mean, there's, you kind of, that's what it is. You're going to sound bad whenever you try to do something at first. The beauty of a good, you know, general music education curriculum is to impart enough principles of musicianship so that it's not a full speed face plant, but little. hopefully, hopefully it's not a face plant at all, but it could be, and just that's what it is. That's what this thing is. Um, and so the more experience you have, um, the more confident you're going to be taking risks, and it tends to work out. But getting started can be really clunky and really challenging. And so I think folks need to be willing to take those risks, take those opportunities, especially when they're young, and they can still sort of recover.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the part of early career that I loved the most was, I do get to do a variety of things now, and it's more necessary to a life where I need income, I need to plan for my future. But when I was younger, I really did say yes to just like almost anything. And it gave me this like amazing kind of schematic of skills that some of them I never touched again. Like I never really did that progressive Spanish music ever again, but I loved it and it was fun. And I'm sure it shows up somewhere in my brain. But I'm certainly glad I had the opportunity to do that. And even now, sometimes I'll sub into an orchestra here, and I am not at the same level as the string players in the orchestra. Like I'm very aware of my skill set, but the challenge is there. And so maybe they practiced, 3 hours to get that together, and I'll do 20 because I can't just show up and play or sight read down the music like everybody else can. But it is that nice challenge where you build up your skill set again, and you're like, okay, that was awfully terrifying, but it wasn't a face plant.
Right.
It's just like a slow decline.
Right. It was a slow motion. So this is great. I did this panel discussion. It was a presentation and a panel discussion called "The Power of Yes," developing skills for a career in the music industry. And the idea came from the Jim Carrey movie Yes Man,
mm-hmm.
where you had to say yes to everything.
Right.
And it also led him to all of these situations that he never would have, encountered if he had not just said yes.
Right.
And it was this, it was very silly and totally ridiculous. But it also, I thought, did a good job to sort of communicate this sort of idea of getting out of your own way by not being the thing that is holding you back, by refusing to, to say yes, to things that you're not maybe naturally comfortable with. So he was doing all kind of stuff, right? He was, since he had to say yes, I think he had like a Turkish wife or something, and it was crazy. It was really silly. It was great. It was great. I got to watch it again. But one thing that really stuck with me, again, is just that idea that if you say no to everything, then you know what you're going to get. You're going to get the same as what you always have. Mm-hmm. But at least if you say yes, there's at least a possibility. There's at least something else that you're not aware of. And then that could maybe lead to something else. In the movie, the woman that he ends up, falling in love with is someone that he never would have, that never would have happened,
right?
Because of just how the path. Now, it came out at one point that he had to say yes to all of this stuff. And so then she was questioning, well, do you like me just because you were saying yes, or like this? But the point is that most of what happens would not have been possible. And at the beginning of a musician's career, you have to say yes to everything. And if you're fortunate enough to be able to sustain yourself, you must say everything. It's the principle of a pyramid, right? Well, I guess it kind of looks like a pyramid. So here's your pyramid, right? So what happens is at the beginning of your career, you're at the bottom. Mm-hmm. And at the bottom, that's when you have to do everything, right? You have to cover more surface area. Yeah. And then what happens is the longer you're working, the idea is to try to move up, so that you can get to the point where you can be specializing in something that only you can do.
Right.
Right. And not everybody gets there, but you don't have to stay on the bottom. But yeah. It's the bottom that actually creates the foundation for anything that's on top of it.
Right.
Right. And yeah. So anyhow, if you haven't seen it, folks watching, Yes Man, it's a.
Now I want to rewatch it. I remember watching it, but now I'm like, I don't have a vivid memory of it, so that'll be on my watch list.
yeah, it's great because what's funny is well, the whole movie's funny, but so he's got to say yes. So his friend, let's see what is it? His friend is getting married, and so his friend asks, "Hey, you want to do her what is it? The bridal party?" So he's gonna plan the bridal party for his friend's girlfriend, right? And they're sitting outside, and then they pan over and they show, it's like his what is it, like his Turkish wife or whatever is sitting next to him, and he's saying, "Oh, and I'm probably going to get rid of her anyway." It's like this kind of thing. It's like, wait a minute, I can hear you. I'm sitting right here, but it's it's like one of these. I don't think he ever met her in person, right? Right. It's like he opened up an email and he has to say yes to everything. So that's how he ends up with this.
Oh my gosh. I watched that. I feel like I saw it on a streaming thing. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. But I feel like this idea of this pyramid, I think that just building this foundation, and it's kind of this situation too where if you get in the habit of saying no, it's going to keep happening. But if you get in the habit of saying yes, regardless of the outcome, you're going to continue to do it. Even if you have a moment which is really scary or doesn't work out the way that it's supposed to,
Yeah, and then there's the other thing where, and this is sort of a practical and maybe a social kind of issue that is solved by saying yes. It is the case that in a particular area of the music industry that you want to be working in, if you say no too often, people will start to think that you don't want to work.
Right.
And that can be sort of dangerous, and that's a hard thing to balance sometimes, because there may be situations where it is a better idea to say no. But maybe you need to say yes because of other opportunities that you think that may come out of something. So, yeah, there is that.
It's good to hear that, because I feel in some ways, I don't know if I always heard that when I was in school, but then there was your one influential teacher that does let you know, you kind of go to them with a conundrum or something, like, should I say yes to this gig? I have to learn all these songs, or I don't really know anybody in the group, or any possible, trepidation to doing it. And then you just need that one person that says, like, you should really do this. And yes, it's going to be hard. Or like, maybe you're not the first call for this because of XYZ, but they still asked you. So go for it and let it happen. And, at that point too, when you're a student, you're sort of freaking out over what would be like, this like hilarious, like $40 gig, that really doesn't factor. But, you're 18 years old and you're like, will they let me in the club? Like, I don't know. Like, and then ultimately you're just like, oh, well, I'm really glad. Because then, that gig didn't go well, but the guitarist and I are like friends now, and we gig together all the time. And that means this other thing. And that is, I think I was very fortunate when I was younger to have a little bit of blind confidence, maybe foolish confidence, but it also, I had enough wherewithal to practice when I would blindly say yes to things that maybe were a bit outside my wheelhouse.